right, so going down the line from Brian, we have Jim Lanzone, who is the president and CEO of CBS Interactive. Next, we have Tony Goncalves, who is the senior vice president of strategy and business development at AT&T. Then we have Eric Johnson, who's the executive vice president of global multimedia sales for ESPN. And last but not least, we have Chris Mosley, who is the chief marketing officer for Game Show Network. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to you, Brian.
Great, thank you very much. So, being a former network executive, I'm immediately going to do a rewrite. We're going to call this the future of television. And let's define television as anything that is video that we can watch on any screen, because that really is the future, and that's very much the world that these folks live in. And the world they live in was upended quite a lot this past summer when Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, talked about earnings, talked about a very small drop in the subscriber base of ESPN, and within 24 hours, $50 billion of market cap had disappeared from media stocks in this country. So Eric Johnson of ESPN, clearly this is your fault.
Yes. Blame me.
Wow.
Blame me.
Tough room.
So Bernie Sanders isn't here, but on his behalf, I will ask you, what happened?
What happened?
No, be serious. Let's be serious. How do you guys feel about the state of ESPN, the bundle, advertising, and your business in general?
This is the one question I'm going to have to be a little careful on, so I'm putting that up front, just because it's been written about so much. I will say that there's no question that the way that consumers are going to consume video is going to change, right? But while the human behavior may change, the human nature is not going to change. Human nature changes at a glacial rate. And with that, we know that sports is inherently going to be consumed, however it's put forth in the universe. And I think that from our standpoint, what happened over the summer and what's continued to happen when the same story is being reported, that nothing new that's being reported that hadn't been reported before, has been a little bit of an overreaction from the inside looking out. And that said, it's something that we take seriously. We talk about it a lot. We are the first to every platform that possibly is distributed. And our kind of company mission is to serve sports fans anytime and anywhere. And so with that, our CEO says when a new platform comes out, let's get our content on there, and then we'll figure out how to monetize it later if we need to, right? But we'll get going and make sure that we are an early adopter. And being the Walt Disney Company, we tend to have that opportunity to be there at the forefront. And that's great, because we learn a lot. So we have a lot of irons in the fire, whether it's the linear stream or whether it's Watch ESPN authenticated. We have an over-the-top solution with Sling TV. I think distribution is just going to look a lot different, and we're not going to shy away from that. And we'll be ready for that.
Okay. We'll come back a little bit more. I want to come back a little later to the monetization across all those platforms. But first, I want to turn to Tony, because obviously AT&T felt very differently, and they spent almost $50 billion to purchase DirecTV. So as you guys look at the future of TV, how do you see it with this combination of phone and internet and satellite?
I would probably mimic exactly what was stated here, which is consumers are consuming the content in droves, more so than ever. How they're consuming it and what type of content they're consuming is evolving. Where they're consuming it is evolving. And so from just a strategic lens, you kind of look at the assets that a combined AT&T and DirecTV bring, and you have a scaled national video platform. Lots of customers consuming lots of video on big screen TVs, and you have a scaled mobile infrastructure, and an engagement and relationship with lots of customers. If you believe that the future is anytime, anywhere, on any device, then bringing these two worlds together is essential. And those that have scale in these two worlds should win. And so our goal, I guess, step one, phase one, priority one, is to ensure all of this content in this pay TV environment is ubiquitously and conveniently available across all the platforms at which, from which consumers are consuming content.
I think that acquisition kind of mirrors our thinking in the idea that it's being overstated, the flight from pay TV cord cutting is being overstated. I think you may have a value proposition issue, and cord shaving may become, or different packages may become, what the future looks like. I think in the past, hey, I have 210 channels, that's great, I get a bunch. I think today's consumer goes, I have 210 channels and I watch 17. That feels like waste. Give me some other options in terms of how I can go about that, and I think that's probably going to affect the business more.
So Jim, turning to you, you're sort of where tech meets a very traditional, media company at CBS. How do you guys look at your content and decide where it goes across all these different devices? And then let's start to talk about how do you monetize that, and how do you make the decision of where am I going to make the most money with my content?
Right. Well, obviously the audience has been migrating. It's not just to the internet. I mean, mobile has been the biggest shift in my business. And CBS Interactive runs a lot of different properties. So it's not just CBS. We run CNET. We run TV Guide Online. And when I got there in 2011, we were 6% mobile traffic. It's now 62% mobile traffic. So that shift has happened. And the consistent thing that you see is just consumers making the decision. You guys all know from your own lives to pick the best screen available. So Super Bowl is a great example of that. We're streaming it this weekend. And we streamed it in 2013. And you think, oh, those it must be disruptive to television. It must be a huge audience. It was only 4 million people watched it online, which at the time was still a big audience for an online sporting event. But it's because it was on your big screen, live, nationally, in your living room. So all the different products that we have, whether they're on the iPhone, the iPad, your desktop, or on the big screen, that's the strategy. Another big shift that's been happening that we haven't mentioned yet is OTT. So moving to Roku boxes, Apple TV, and all these, and so that's a whole nother angle that we need to do. And so for us, to your point on monetization, as long as it's measurable and monetizable, we need to be there. And the audiences are fragmenting a little bit across different screens, and we need to be able to have our product, especially as a standalone content company, right? So CBS is also a little bit unique that way. We are a standalone premium content company, and so obviously all of our focus has to be on creating that and distributing it to our audiences.
Okay, Chris, I want to bring you in, and the next question, I swear, but
No worries.
You brought up streaming a game. And I was at a wedding in Northern California, and suddenly there was Yahoo streaming a football game.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the first three of you are all in the NFL business.
Right.
Right? How did you feel about your partner selling a game to Yahoo of all people?
Well, first thing is, so it was our game. So CBS broadcast that game. And
So I think we
you
know
saw,
the answer then.
You saw our broadcast team doing it.
It was a stellar
It
matchup
was
too, by the way.
interesting. Yeah.
The
What the difference
for those
is-
of you who missed the Jags, the Bills from London, you
Yeah.
missed nothing.
The difference is, so
Especially if you started the Jags quarterback in fantasy football, just saying.
in contrast to what I said about the Super Bowl we streamed 4 years ago. So again, we will stream 7 NFL games this year leading up to the Super Bowl. We did, so that was just one game. But the difference for that game is that it was the only way you could watch it unless you were in Buffalo or Jacksonville. So for an international audience, you could only watch it online. So that's why those numbers were higher. But I mean, I do think you see the slicing and dicing of some of these rights happening, and that was one example. Whereas historically, we had some of those rights, but we didn't have all of them. I mean, their competitor at Verizon has the exclusive online rights if you watch it in an app, in their app, whereas you could watch it on our website.
In region.
So they've already kind of been playing with that, and we'll see why.
Okay, Chris, sorry, go ahead, Eric.
No, never mind. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Look, I think the NFL's been, the NFL has the girth and the following to be able to start to slice and dice, and they're proving the concept that a streaming package could be in the future at some point. The scale isn't there yet for it to be a financial windfall, quite the opposite right now. To be in the streaming-only service for NFL, it's just not there yet. But someday it will be.
Okay. Tony, anything you want to add?
Look, the Jags did well, and I think the Giants are going to play in London next year, and so hopefully they have the same outcome.
Okay, Chris, so you're at the Game Show Network. You've been at History when it rebranded, among others. How does a channel that's not part of a big group like Disney
You mean the
you know,
scrappy
or
little
Viacom.
startup?
Yeah, scrappy little startup. How do you survive in this environment? What do you have to do programmatically? What do you have to do in a marketing sense to compete in this space?
That's a good question. I've been at Game Show about a year and a half, and we started about 4 years ago producing our own original content in more volume. So since that point, we've actually grown year over year. We've had our best years ever each year. And I think it's the human nature point that you were making, which is people just love games. They always have. And then they get away from kind of the pressures of their everyday lives with the idea of play. And also, I think the times are working for us now. It worked that way when we rebranded and refreshed the History brand. We'd had the same core audience for about 4 years. I was brought in with a team by Abby Raven to kind of turn that around, keep our core, but rapidly expand and down age. And basically what we found was that in terms of the male viewers we were after, there was actually this kind of urban male angst going on, that they weren't really out kind of fending for their families and their loved ones, like with their own hands, and kind of that frontier guy mentality. So we developed shows that sort of fit into that and talked about history being made every day around you and not just in the past, and that resonated. And I think the same thing's going on now that's working for us and our growth, because we've been growing not only with our core, but also we really have been bringing in the younger demo. In fact, year over year with our Skin Wars show, which is, we're going to our 3rd season. We're going to have our first spin-off. It's kind of a competition reality type show, so it's a little bit different than the traditional game shows. But the biggest growth we had was in women 18 to 24. So bottom line is, I think the idea of play is resonating because there's just so much anxiety right now in society. I mean, there just is. People are worried about sort of everything, terrorism, their jobs, you know, just really everything. And that just means that the idea of getting away from it, and also with some people, the ability to learn. We've got those segments of kind of just the escapists, and then people who like the idea of playing, but they take something away, some kind of info morsel, I like to call it. So the other part that's helping us is that we also have a gaming division under GSN. So we've already got a big audience, like 2 million women a day coming to our mobile games and casual games. So basically what we're working on now, that we'll be talking about more in the months to come, around kind of more around our upfront, is how do we have that second screen kind of aspect for our television content, and then how do we really directly develop more kind of casual games in the gaming space and sort of migrate that around to our television content. So I think we're in a great space looking forward. We haven't had kind of the huge market share that's declining. We actually had a smaller market share that's growing. So we're excited.
That's great. That's great. And I think there is certainly a cycle in programming. And I was telling Chris, you know, when we spoke earlier, you know, that my son who's in college actually got very excited to learn that I actually know somebody at Family Feud, because he and his friends at college now watch Family Feud, which is,
Yay!
and it's the only time in my career he's actually been excited about anything that I could actually get him into.
See, there we go.
But I think you touched on something I thought was really great, which was this idea that things happen in society and the shows have some sort of emotional and cathartic sense. And in a lot of ways, that was the original Star Trek. We were able to play out what was happening in the society, but in a safe space, pun intended. And now you guys are reviving Star Trek.
Yep.
And you've made an interesting choice. Do you want to tell everybody where we're actually going to be able to see the new Star Trek series?
So it's the first digital first show that we've ever created. So it will be available online, online only, at least to start with.
Okay, and how specifically online? It's
Behind
the all
our,
access.
yeah, for in our subscription bundle, yeah.
Okay, and so why don't you give a pitch for your subscription bundle for those of us who have not
So
bought it yet
there are
but
two
should?
ways. It was similar to Netflix doesn't have this. That's all just subscription. But the way Hulu has traditionally been with a free product, and then Hulu Plus was the tier that people would pay for. We did the same thing at the end of 2014. We launched CBS All Access, which for $5.99 a month, as opposed to the free product, which you get the trailing 5 episodes, of most of our current lineup, you can have all episodes of all seasons, as well as all the other shows that we own, which, by the way, aren't only historically CBS shows. So Star Trek was an NBC show originally, Cheers, things like that, that were not CBS. They're part of our library from Paramount that we also own. There's a lower ad load, so you don't see as many advertisements, and you can also get a live linear feed of your local market. So if you're in LA, you can watch KTLA, the live broadcast, through the platform. So all those things collectively are part of CBS All Access. And to your next question on why would you create that, there are really two subsets of people that's targeted at. One are the again, to Eric's point earlier, the very small number of people that are in that kind of cord never or cord shaver, or people kind of head towards a smaller bundle. We have to be able to get our product in front of those people. But mostly it's for what we call super fans, so the people who essentially demanded that higher tier, who wanted more content from us in more places, basically in an unlimited fashion, and that's who we created that for.
Okay. So now, Tony, let me do a Jerry Springer moment. Let's just pretend that
Should we get the chairs ready?
Yeah, absolutely. Where's our bodyguard?
He didn't go to UCLA, in case you're rooting for somebody.
People that went to UCLA on the panel, raise your hand. Okay. Just so we know who to applaud for. Very good. Okay, so DirecTV is part of another big new revenue stream, relatively speaking, for broadcast networks, which is retransmission, right? So you give money to the network and or through the local, broadcaster, money for essentially the value of the programming. And let's pretend you really love Star Trek and you're very upset that that's not actually part of what you're paying for. Are you going to have to buy that now on another, and put it somewhere else on DirecTV, or is it not even going to be available?
So in this case, it's not going to be available.
Okay.
But, look, it's back to the comment that was made earlier. There is so much quality content being created. There's so much access to quality content in different ways. And so, I think we're sort of the opinion that, you need to test and trial as the world evolves. Do we like the disaggregation of content being delivered over the top and monetized by, the folks we pay, retransmission fees to? Not necessarily. But, consumers vote at the end of the day. And if consumers end up liking this bundle and they figured out a way to monetize their library as an aggregator and a curator of content, which is what we do, we will have to come together and figure out how to bring that stuff together for consumers. But we're in this phase of literal trial and error. I mean, absent Netflix, there isn't a whole lot of scale in streaming. There is focused products for focused, segments of consumers. At some point, that stuff may need to be aggregated and, and simplified. And that's what we do for a living. So
is
A plus.
Yeah.
A plus.
You
That
like
was
that answer?
extremely well articulated.
Yeah, but there was no.
And I didn't go to UCLA.
I softened the question.
That was very un-Iona of you.
By the way,
Transmission feed.
I am a Giants fan, and that was a joke.
Yeah.
I don't want what happened to anyway.
Yeah. I'm a Giants fan too.
London
Right there
bring
with
us
you.
luck.
I am
is
too,
what it
because
is.
I gave up on the Jets in '73.
Okay.
But my bar mitzvah year was good. 69 was good.
It was good.
So what advice, when you look at the channels you put into the DirecTV package, and sitting to your left are literally the scale opposites. You've got the big gun on the Disney Channel. You've got the scrappy little fighter from Sony. How do you think about the two of them, and how do you go through? What's your sort of your checklist when you go to do that negotiation? And first, the decision of who gets on, and then second, what do you want from them, and how much will you pay? What are sort of the drivers of that thought process?
How much time do we have?
Yeah,
Do we have an
I know.
analytics professor?
I'll give you, take two.
Yes, please take me through
Take
your
2
business model.
minutes.
I know. I'm taking notes.
Look,
I'm
I think-
Promise not to take notes.
I think, let's see if I get an A+ on this one. I think first and foremost, it's back to the comment I made a little while ago, which is at the core, we are an aggregator and curator of content. Consumers see value in that. We believe, and I mean this wholeheartedly, in providing consumers choice. The challenge we have today is that there is the rising cost of programming is outpacing the price-value equation. The need for flexibility, accessibility of content hasn't really followed, right? So today in ATV Everywhere, sort of authenticated in our app, as an example, you can't get a fully robust content offering. And so I come back to the original point that I made. Content ubiquity of what we have in our bundle, priority number one. Like the price-value equation of $100 billion business, which is pay TV, between fees and advertising, there's a long runway. We need to fix that. We collectively need to come figure that out. Now, you asked the questions about channels and pruning channels, and there's been lots of conversation about skinny bundles, lots of dialogue about the 17 channels. We believe in propping up the price value. We believe in giving customers lots of content, high quality content across platforms. We believe we're positioned to do that. But we should not forget or lose sight of the fact that $100 a month for TV or for video is a lot of money. And at some point in time, we're going to need to consolidate some brands, consolidate some channels, and give options to consumers. But I don't think you'll see us get away from the big bundle. And I'll end sort of this commentary back on sort of the 17 channels that everybody watches. But maybe in this room, you guys all watch the same 17 channels, but my neighbor watches a very different set of 17 channels than I do. I have a 12 and a 9-year-old. My parents watch a different set of 17 channels. If we were to create skinny, in order to get any scale, we're going to have to create lots of skinnies.
Yes.
And so we're pretty comfortable with where we are. I think we got to balance out the price value equation and then go find some scaled audiences to go build some products for. And I think we can do that together. We're not in the content production business.
If you took your family of
A+?
four,
Great. Yeah.
A plus?
if
You're
you
in
took
the
a
A
family
range.
of four,
Yeah.
Range.
Yeah.
you took
Those
a
good.
family
I
of
missed
four
the violence,
to
but
see
still. Sorry, Eric, go ahead.
I said if you took a family of four to see a Pixar movie in 3D on an opening weekend, how much would that cost you? About $100 for a month of every channel that exists with 24/7 and all opportunities to be able to do so. I think there's a perception of a value issue. In fact, my point of view is that the set-top box is the dumbest device in your home in many ways, right? I mean, it's dumber than the blender. It would finish behind that in an SAT or ACT. And so I think that that UI in some ways is part of the problem of what television is facing, right? I'm at home. I have every single device, every over-the-top device, and I have another company, not AT&T or DirecTV.
We got to fix that.
We do. We do. So I want DirecTV badly. Trust me. But when I go to interface with the regular television, regular cable, it's slow to start up. Then you get a pop-up ad. Then you get through that pop-up ad, and you get a pay-per-view ad, and then you get to the guide, and you get a slow version of a guide, and then to get to the channel, by the time you get to where you're actually navigating channel often, it's a pain. And so I've taken it where I've thrown the remote down, pulled out my phone, and Chromecasted something, and within minutes. I mean, that's part of what Netflix has going for it is the UI. It's not the robust library, a suite of movies that they used to have that they don't have anymore. But they have a great OI. So to me, I always think of it like Blockbuster Video did not have a people want to watch movies business challenge. They had a people don't want to get in the car in their pajamas at 11:45 at night to make sure they don't get late fees. That was their challenge. And in many ways, I think in television, people want the opportunity to interface with their video in ways that over-the-top provides.
I do think that they're going to be looking eventually for the ability to search across all of the different options.
Didn't you create something like that? Hang on for a second. Jim actually, was it Clicker? Is that the right name?
Yeah.
So talk about Clicker and what that was, and does it exist in any shape or form today, or does it?
It's part TV Guide digital now. So Clicker was my startup that I sold to CBS in 2011, started in 2009. That was essentially a video, as Chris just said, video search engine across platforms. Not just Netflix, Hulu, everything else, but we actually searched YouTube all the way down to the midtails. So you can just type, search for any topic and see those videos. But it was a little, again, I even think that was early. I think we're just getting to the point now where people are kind of ready for it. But it does have to be more robust than just searching,
Yes.
Netflix and Hulu and
Exactly.
which some of the other ones that came after us tried to do. And you have to be smart about it, know what people are members of and subscribers to, and to make that seamless. But hopefully at some point, it's not just show. But by the way, the biggest challenge for that is piracy. I know nobody in here does that. But that's the other thing is if you type that into a search engine, you better be able to get the real thing. Otherwise, people are going to click
That's
into Kim.com's trove of stuff in New Zealand.
Just
Tony,
one comment. So back to this, I'm a tremendous proponent of universal search and better UIs, and I was in a conversation the other day, and the Apple question kind of comes up of they're these UI leads, and why can't they just come in and fix this problem? I think we got to kind of take a little bit of a step back, and we're going to get to the monetization conversation. One of the challenges with better UIs is the rights landscape that kind of comes with a pay TV, an MVPD purchasing that content, right? So if you go on a pay TV platform and you watch a VOD title, your fast forward is likely disabled. It's not a great experience, right? So no UI can fix that. That's an inherent monetization challenge, I think, for us. You go on our platform, you get a rolling, now it's getting better, but rolling 5 episodes of a certain piece of content. If I want to binge or I want to start watching, I've got to go to a different service. And so that comes back to we've got to do a much better job at the price value equation here. Fixing that, the UIs will come. What I tend to do is we almost mirror everything on an app. I will search on an app,
Yes.
and we have a mechanism where the box basically responds, right? So
It's better too because you can actually type. And the most frustrating thing about all these things is
Yeah,
click, click,
I
click,
think
click,
a lot
click.
of people do that. I really do. I think that's
whip out the app.
Yeah, we
set
should be
a
able to
recording
workaround
talk to
people are
our,
doing.
just talk to our
The
bots.
guy-
I don't want to, get ahead of ourselves, but
So you should get DirecTV.
should be voice. Well, not that I would get in the middle of a commercial, but I have to ask a
just
question
awesome.
on behalf of many of the baseball fans here. You know the question, which is, do I have to keep going to Dodger Stadium despite my DirecTV subscription to see the Los Angeles Dodgers?
Yes.
Why?
Look, it's back to one of these. It's the price value thing. You are asked to pay for these rights across your entire base, but only a portion of your base cares. And so, a few 100,000 subs are interested in the LA area, right? But millions will have to pay for access to the Dodgers. And so we continue to work with with those organizations to try to come to a resolution. But it's the cost of the bundle has just gotten of pay TV has just gotten a little it's just gotten high. And so adding these high additional sports fees into the cost equation is just not something that that we should be passing along to our entire base in Los Angeles.
I knew you were going to say that, but I had to ask because it was one of those required questions.
Yeah, look, that's sports in general, especially regional sports, is going to that's a tough challenge for the industry, and there's good reasons on all sides. But
Let's talk about monetization. And Eric, I'm going to start with you. So, ESPN's mantra, all sports for our fans, anytime, any place. How do you look at all the different screens? How do you monetize the different screens, and what are the challenges that each entail?
Okay, so to me on this front, the word television and the word digital, I don't like either of those words, and I see a future where those words cease to exist. In fact, they already do cease to exist. We're still hanging on to them, keeping them relevant. The way we look at the world is more about the behavior of how you're consuming video. Are you watching a live game, or are you watching highlights, recap, those types of things, analysis? And what we see is that if you're watching a live game, whether it's on a television, a laptop, or a mobile phone or tablet, your behavior mimics the same behavior across all those screens. You watch for about 63 minutes during a live football game, for example, regardless of which of those 4 screens you're watching on. And when you're watching highlights, you're watching a sports center on any of those devices, you watch for about 15 minutes. Same as television. So the behaviors are following kind of the content more than the device. And I think for us, that's how we go to market to try to monetize. We try to make it as seamless, as easy for advertisers to go cut across all those screens in every way, shape, and form. So that's how we go to market to sell it. We're selling it. The word rating to me is also, rating is a mathematical equation, right? A numerator and a denominator. And the denominator is the television household universe. So now we have all these impressions that are happening outside of TV households. So why are we still talking about ratings? It's impressions. It's video impressions.
He said it.
So it also helps the digital folks in the world when they say, or even marketers, hey, I had 500,000 views. That sounds pretty big. Hey, I had a unique audience of 15 million. That sounds pretty big. And then our TV guys are going, hey, we got a 3. Like, it just doesn't sound big. So why are we talking about a 3 rating? And the flip side of that is that, we reached 30 million people during this 1 hour. At every single moment of that hour, we reached 30 million people. That sounds pretty good. Sounds better. So anyway, there's a whole thing that's going on here that we need to change the vernacular nomenclature. My experience in the business is when you change it, it changes the behavior or the acceptance.
Okay, so let's accept that in changing perception, we change the reality. And the reality, of course, is what are people paying for each one of those? What are advertisers paying for each one of those impressions?
Yeah, so
Right. So there was a point where a digital eyeball was absolutely worth a whole lot less than a linear broadcast eyeball. Where are we in the
not in the
progression
video
today?
space. Not in the video space.
Where we were.
What?
If you go back to the beginning of when ABC started putting stuff on ABC.com, that was the discussion. It was like, it's not worth it. Today, that's not true, right? In some cases, digital could be more.
Not true. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we
Yes.
are sold out at all times of video online, full episodes, especially, and the rates are, as Eric's saying, they're equal or better to, and it makes sense, right? You can actually target online. You have data, and so that's probably where the extra comes from, and just being a little bit sexier and newer, probably. But yeah, so I mean, we're very happy to with the monetization online. That's really not the issue for us at this point.
It's getting the other side, the marketers and the agencies, advertising agencies, to understand how to transact in this space. That way, that's the bigger issue. So the television buyers are still buying video, and sometimes over the top, and the digital buyers are buying video if it's on a digital device, and sometimes over the top, and it's case by case, and sometimes it's marketer by marketer within one agency. So it's
Right.
very complicated right now. We're making this complicated. Our goal is to simplify this process to the greatest degree that we can and make sure we have the flexibility to sell it in multiple ways. Because I think that is incredibly important. As it was one of my-
Yeah, I mean, I think because I'm also a client as the CMO, and we're out there buying digital and linear, and I think the attraction for digital for clients is really the analytics that you get back, and you're really able to show the ROI, and that you're getting to the people that you need to get, and they were engaged with you, and I think the research aspects of kind of the reaching the consumer who loves video, so sort of that video-centric consumer, which I think is going to basically go to whatever platform you're getting it on. The analytics just haven't caught up in terms of showing how a consumer that you're after, you're targeting through your brand, is really involved with your content, whatever platform it shows up on. I mean, now that, Rentrack's helping some, Symphony, the TiVo server, I mean, there needs to be, basically every marketer is going to be getting probably 5 or 6 different types of research and trying to cobble it together, and that just drives up your marketing costs at a time where people are having to do more with less. So that's another thing that has to kind of come together.
And do we see a time where computers are talking to computers and buying time in shows? Or is the human element always going to be there, Eric?
Well, that's happening more and more now with programmatic.
Yeah, I think it happens to some degree. There's some bandwidth. It probably takes over direct response television, not high premium television ever, in my mind. But there will be an opportunity to sell a certain amount of inventory and a certain amount of tolerance by marketers to say, I know might not be getting the right thing, but it's okay for me to do that in this space from an automated standpoint. I do think that the whole chain right now, if you work in our business, from the time of, hey, I think I want to start to advertise, to the time you actually start advertising, to the time you invoice for advertising and you supply metrics for the advertising, the amount of humans who touch that from front to end is terrible. It's one of the most inefficient supply chains ever. So that will become more automated in a space, and I think I'm looking forward to that. We're all behind that.
I think there's growing automation in terms of getting on sort of the first pass of a buy if you're going after a certain demographic. And then, the senior people can kind of put on a network. It used to happen for CNN years ago. Like, they didn't really make sense from a rating standpoint, but the clients would say, where's CNN on my buy? So there's a little bit of that going on. But you really need to end up in the top 20 in your demo in a particular time period to show up on the first blush that the agency looks at.
The one thing about automation that I would caution against, or at least I think that this group should think about, is the idea that I believe that content and context matter. I believe that environment matters. I believe when you advertise in something that someone's really passionate about,
Right.
it does have a better impact. And when you automate and when you target,
You lose that.
you lose that.
Yeah.
You're commoditizing the idea that the context or relevance has no issue whatsoever. As long as I have Jim, I got Jim. I don't care if Jim's picking up his morning paper.
Right.
He's the penny saver out of his mailbox or watching an episode of The Walking Dead. It matters the same for Jim in all three of those situations. I don't believe that.
Well, that's why the price value of a programmatic ad
correct.
versus a premium ad is what it is.
CNET is still, which is probably the largest pure content acquisition in the digital space ever. It was about $2 billion in 2008. It still gets almost 3-digit CPMs. If you are one certain cell phone maker, you have to intercept the user when they're reading a review of a competitor's phone. And that probably exists on WebMD maybe and pharmaceuticals. There's very few places, but that is, I used to work for a search engine for a long time. It doesn't matter what your demographic is. If you're searching for a motorcycle, you're searching for a motorcycle, right? And that's what's so great about that. And it's true, data targeting does not cover that. It just doesn't.
Okay, so let's just spend a little bit of time before we turn over to questions on over-the-top and specifically Netflix. So I'm going to start with you, Jim. So your tech background, a lot of times the first mover in the tech world stays the first, stays the leader. Do you see that happening with Netflix, or do you see, are we done, or is the world still changing and evolving?
Well, probably both in a certain way. Yeah, I think that their brand is definitely going to be a long-term successful brand. We always see in the internet space that the first mover, as long as they do it well, it doesn't always happen. If you think about MySpace and Facebook, and there have been some others who have punted on a category that they probably shouldn't have punted on. But yeah, I think the real question is just more as this plays out and how much money is being spent on content, what the ratings really are. What is the model over the long term? Because they don't, they're not a profitable company by most measures, and that's fine. That's not the bet they're making. The same way Jeff Bezos didn't make that bet with Amazon for a long time. So that's what I mean about being in flux. We don't know yet exactly how the Netflix model plays out and how the content community reacts to it long term. I mean, because there are consequences of that. These shows aren't being syndicated; they're just there forever. And how does that impact the show creating community? And so there are questions going forward, but obviously, they are a significant player, and they're starting to throw some weight around.
Tony, Netflix for you?
I think very, very, very similar answer. I mean, look, the brand's there, the reach is there. They've got some runway from a growth standpoint. How the programming community and the content community ends up sort of playing that game is very, very important. But they've seen that, right? Which is why their focus on original programming has shifted as much as it has. It went from movies to TV to now original drama. And so, I kind of come back to we should be able to aggregate and curate at scale and provide a tremendous amount of value back to our customers where yet another subscription is not necessarily needed.
So does that mean in your mind at one point you'll offer so much I won't need Netflix, or are you thinking that since they've started down the programmatic path of HBO, that maybe one day I'll just get Netflix on channel 671.
If that ends up being their strategy and consumers end up demanding some level of aggregation for 30, 40 original shows, again, back to aggregator, curator, whoever it might be, we've got to go deliver that and deliver value back to our customers. I think right now we're in no rush to aggregate Netflix as a channel.
So Eric, we heard earlier, streaming of a game on Yahoo. Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night thinking that Netflix will make a bid for the NFL?
Have you seen the rights to what the NFL is? And
I have.
Yes, you have. I know you have. The NFL is very expensive, my friends. I want to tell you what the number is, but I can't. It's very expensive. I don't see the economics of that, because when the rights come up, and if you watch sports rights have almost doubled every time they've come up. That's just the reality, because the value still exists in sports. Sports is consumed 96% live. And it's one of the few things left that's live. And so if you're a mass marketer who wants to reach everybody, this is one of your few vehicles in real time to have a real impact across this country. I've heard this notion of Netflix of sports, and I've said, wait a minute, it's a pay-per-view model that's not watched live. It's based on a curated library of on-demand. How is that relevant that the NFL would want to be there? The consumption of Netflix is not conducive to I have to tune in at this moment. So why would their first foray into tune in at this moment be NFL? And they don't have commercials. So there's no way for them to offset the cost of what they're going to pay the NFL, because I don't think that Netflix is going to add the NFL. If you look at who their loyal list is and say, by the way, now Netflix is $50 a month, I don't see that being a possibility. So no, I do not lose sleep over it.
Excellent news. Chris, think there's going to be a day when you guys start to have a game and you're thinking maybe we'll give it to Netflix and maybe then bring it to the channel, or just not put it on the channel and sell it directly to Netflix?
Basically what we focus on is really creating content that, as Tony was saying, consumers are really going to look for demand and value. And from a marketing standpoint, the digital channels give us the opportunity to have that one-to-one relationship with them and really sort of work that through. If there's something that makes sense for that window, then I'm sure that we would look at it eventually. But right now, we've got business partners that have really contributed to our being able to create original production. And they've also helped us connect with a broader base of consumers. So we're going to be very respectful of what it takes for them to succeed in their businesses.
Okay. The other big over-the-top player that, some people are in business with, and CBS chose early on to not become partners with, was Hulu. Can you talk a little bit about why not Hulu for CBS?
Oh, so it technically is before my time there, but I did know the people who were there, and I know the thinking afterwards, and I think we've tremendously benefited from them not having done Hulu. And the thought was, CBS is in a unique position of having 15 of the top 20 scripted shows on television and the NFL and all kinds of things that, not every network had the full package that CBS had. So thinking was, why throw in it was an 80-year-old brand that had a lot of meaning and was one of the leading brands, in the country, especially in television. And if you don't if you go in with Hulu, then they decide where to distribute it with their logo, and then you only keep 25% of the revenue. Just as a model to disrupt yourself as well. I mean, imagine being a product manager during those years at NBC.com or ABC.com, and they're promoting Hulu as the place to watch your shows, right? We never have had that conflict with CBS.com, so let's build our own business. And then I think opened up opportunities for us, not only for Netflix to come along and be a place that we have partnered with and sold a lot of content to, because I think if CBS had thrown in with Hulu, it might have been game over with all four networks on one. Especially in 2008, just starting out. So that's really, I think enabled an opportunity not just for ourselves but for everybody by letting a lot of different sites bloom and services bloom. And now we're getting the benefit of it, where we've built very substantive online business, and now we have our own version of a paid subscription product. So I think long term it's worked out well, but that doesn't mean that there aren't potential partnerships for us with Hulu. And in fact, we have sold content into Hulu Plus, which is more their Netflix level competitor. So now it's getting complicated, but the original free product is what we decide not to partner with.
Yeah, we went on to Hulu last year for the first time for our brand with that Skinwares franchise that we're so excited about. And for us, it was a way, just with the previous 2 seasons, to reach these newer viewers that weren't necessarily our core viewers. And it's worked. We've had kind of a transformation of our audience profile without alienation. That's one of our little phrases, transformation without alienation. And I think that it's working. And there are some, if you're going to try to get to some of these viewers that you're not necessarily getting traditionally, and you can do it without damaging your monetization model, it makes sense. I mean, really more as a marketing vehicle.
So in a funny way, they paid you to market your product.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool. Okay, so we can barely see you because of the lights, but I think it's time for
so
questions. I think there's little cushy balls that will get, or squares that will get thrown around, and there's a question, I think.
Yeah,
Sir.
can you hear me? Haven't used this before. Well, my name is Bernie Campos from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. I wanted to get back to, and I'm over here, by the way.
Yep, we see you.
I wanted to
Nice
touch
tie.
on, thank you.
Yeah, I thought he might be
Wow,
a
I need
C
my
with the red tie.
So I wanted to touch on a point that you mentioned, Eric, which is, you pay for 210 channels while you watch 17, and that seems wasteful. I know it's hard to see Netflix, for example, as wasteful, but if you realize that you pay $10 a month and you watch 5% of what they have on their platform,
Yeah.
you could see that as wasteful too. And my question is what stands in the way between a future where I can say, hey, Netflix, I don't want to watch all this stuff you're offering me. I just want to pay less for this content that I do care about. And, where it could be 100% efficient for everybody, depending on their tastes. Do you see that as a future that makes sense economically? I mean, not in the economics of the industry as it makes sense now, but, economics in general.
So can I restate your question just to make sure?
Sure, yeah.
We've got it. So what you're really asking is there an a la carte
Determine a la
or a
carte.
pay-per-view option in Netflix's future?
Not in Netflix's future, but
Okay.
for the industry to evolve that way, to say, we're going to make it efficient for everybody. You pay for what you
I
want.
think it's a la carte.
EST.
Okay.
EST.
Yeah, electronic sell-through, right? You can go on iTunes or on Amazon, and you can buy, you can buy content by episode.
Yep.
Apple TV, Swim?
But
The model doesn't work because what you're charging, you very quickly get to what they're currently.
it just, look, it's basic economics, right? It costs money to make content. And the presumption is that it's free. And I think, regardless of where you sit on this panel, monetizing that content is rather important because you've got to go in and create new content. And so that model is ideal, except for it will cost consumers a whole lot of money, a lot more than it does today.
I think that the notion of watching a 30-second ad in my generation was a given. I'll watch that ad because I know I'm getting the content for free. No problem. I think that's being challenged, and I think digital has helped challenge that, and I think marketers have not helped us to overcome that. So I still think people like watching ads. Next weekend, in San Francisco, there's a small game where everyone's going to watch ads. Right?
If not
And it's gonna be
before.
And they're going to
It's going to be streamed apparently.
they're going
as
to
well.
lean
For
in
free.
to watch those ads because they're going to be good ads. And what you don't like is seeing the same Axe ad 17 times in a row. That's what you don't like.
I like that Amazon miniature horse.
So that's shame on the marketer for having one ad, and that's shame on our ad tech for not knowing that it already served you and changing that. So we are investing at ESPN and rolling out a pretty extensive creative works platform where we're working with advertisers saying, hey, if you're going to plan for live, you need to have 20 messages that are in the marketplace. You can't just take your linear 30 or your linear 15 and run it across every other platform and make a bad consumer experience. So we're treating the ad space a little bit more like content, and because that's our bet. Our bet is if we put better ads out there, it won't be quite so bad for the consumer experience.
Okay.
In front of the right consumer.
Other
right?
questions?
Exactly.
All the way in the back?
Hi, George Chan, Warner Brothers Television Research. This is a question for Jim, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But it sounded like from Tony and Eric that it's important for them to have ubiquitous content across all their devices to mirror the experience, whether you're watching your television or on a tablet. So let me, for CBS though, it seems like you've created a window between across devices between watching the next day airing of the episode on CBS.com versus CBS mobile app. Can you explain that a little bit? Why you did it and what have you learned from that?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just a different tier. Again, for us, that the mobile experience is just a different tier of of your subscription with us. So CBS.com is the next day air, free. But if you want to take that to go, that's part of the. Is the 8 day. But if you want to pay to get it next day, that's what the subscription tier is for. Just like lower ad load, just like being able to watch live linear, being able to access every show we've ever done. That's the thinking behind that. So that's why it's part of the paid tier.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
there you go. Hey guys, my name is Vahag. I'm an Anderson alum, and I have a question, Eric, for you. It's actually an extension of a question Jim asked that had to do with Netflix, ESPN, or NFL on Netflix. That you said that you're not worried, which makes sense. I understand NFL is top tier. Some of the other leagues and stuff may not be so much. However, so I'm going to rephrase the question in a different way.
Got it.
So instead of Netflix, what about Facebook? So I think Facebook has recently rolled into live content, live video content. I actually saw UCLA trying to extend some live video yesterday. I was like, wow, that's interesting. Maybe I can watch the Bruins game on Facebook online. So and I'm not saying the NFL is going to get there right off the bat, but I could see that a platform is slowly evolving to be a competitor. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'm so glad you asked that question. And I want to hear your guys' thoughts as well to my point of view if you disagree, please. Of course they could. They've got the money, right? So will we think of them as a competitor towards future sports, right? Yes. If I was Facebook, I don't know why I would ever do that. Because the amount of money you'd have to invest, the economics right now in today's current landscape, you're not going to make that money back. If you were going to pay $2 billion a year for NFL rights, and I'll use that as the example, it could be less than that for Major League Baseball or for something else, then you are making a $2 billion investment on an annual basis to make money off of. My sense is that Facebook, if they spent $2 billion on R&D for something else, they would make a lot more money off of that than trying to break even on rights for sports leagues. So while I think they can do it and they have the money to do it, I think that they have other opportunities that would return on investment would be a lot higher than with sports rights. But that said, we'll treat them in every negotiation as a possible competitor. Is it fair?
Yeah. The other thing is to realize I've been doing consumer internet for a long time now, since the Web 1.0 pre-bubble days. There have always been the big players, AOL and then Yahoo originally and then Google, and now we're in this phase where you have the new 800-pound gorillas and everybody says, what if they did blank? And they're the blank killer, right? But historically what you've seen, almost across the board with very few exceptions, like Amazon doing AWS might be an exception until you really realize what they do. And then you're like, okay.
Correct.
You got to focus as a business, right? You have to do certain things well. And, so if they did start to get into that, I would, I think it would be a little worrisome in terms of thinking about what their real strategy is and what
I would
they
worry
provide.
about that. There's a reason why Yahoo did the streaming rights.
That's right.
Lack of focus, desire to be a content company, but that had nothing. There was no other strategic value for that within their platform.
Right. But to your point, they absolutely could, and I suspect in certain cases they will and might try it, because that's the other thing the 800-pound gorillas have never been able to avoid, which is dabbling and sticking their toe in those kinds of waters and seeing. But ultimately, a business has to focus.
But
And Eric, wasn't ESPN at one point in time looking to get more international sports rights? I mean,
yeah,
didn't
it's a very difficult business. We were in the UK.
Yeah,
Setanta Sports was going bankrupt. We took over their Premier League rights.
that's what I thought.
We launched within 45 days 2 pay TV networks. 45 days to live. And then in 2 years lost the Premier League sports rights to BT.
Right.
And had to pull those 2 back out because they're still get in the sport, right?
Yeah, I would say not that Facebook's a shiny object. I think Facebook it's a great company. It's a great consumer product. He's a great leader. But sports seems like the shiny object,
Right.
sports content, until you get into the fragmentation of rights, until you get into the requirements by which those billions that you pay, you need to live by start getting into the monetization vehicle. The internet is great, but it's still not there, right? For 2 hours of streaming video with the quality of like there's a lot of work that we need to do in the network to get there, and so and we will. And it's happening every day, right?
It is.
And
Yeah,
And the
in
leagues
Europe,
still
and in Europe,
control
the big sale was
a
the
lot of the
Olympics
rights.
to Discovery, and how are they monetizing it? By buying Eurosport and buying a bunch of broadcast
yeah.
channels.
Right.
So,
it's-
but to
it's
the
kinda
point,
funny.
they can, but will they? Right?
They just launched a stadium section, right? Where they're going to aggregate and curate everything that's going on around every single live sport you want to watch. So when your Giants are on now, their bet is that you're going to go to Facebook and consume the live
Right.
event with all your friends on Facebook. That probably costs them not very much money.
Yeah.
And they'll sell that in the
and it keeps you
marketplace
on-
as though that's
And
NFL.
it's
And it
something
keeps
that,
you on Facebook.
and
That's
something Twitter should have had a more robust version of.
They
and-
should have.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
well,
that's a very
for
cool
platform.
and usable product, though, on a platform where that's the type of engagement you're driving.
And it doesn't cost
Well,
you
they're
$2 billion.
already living there.
It does not
basically.
cost you billions.
I want to thank you all very, very much. This was terrific. Thank you so much for being here.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.